Hello learners, welcome back to yet another session of Learning and Development in Organization. Today we'll continue with where we left last time, the context of learning and development. This will be the part 2. I'm Dr. Cyril Issac. I'm an assistant professor at the School of Business, Indian Institute of Technology, Guwahati. Now, when you look into learning and development, I tried to emphasize the importance of learning and development. Specifically, if you have gone through the previous session, you would see that we have tried to make or bring the ADDIE framework. We have looked into different types of learning and development possibilities. Today, we'll look more deeply into learning and development, and the underlying theme for today's discussion would be the only sustainable competitive advantage is an organization's ability to learn faster than the competition. So this would be the underlying theme for today. Let's understand the role of technology in learning and development. When you talk about the role of technology in learning and development specifically, we have to bring this discussion of AI and personalized learning paths. We have gone much deeper in my previous course of AI and HRM in the NPTEL platform, but for today, we just move around in a cursory manner, in a peripheral manner with respect to the definition and importance of these factors. AI-powered learning programs and platforms use machine learning algorithms and data analytics to create customized learning experience. So these systems analyze learner behavior, they analyze the preferences, they analyze the performance to recommend relevant content, adjust the difficulty levels, and to personalize the learning path altogether. So when you are looking into the key features of these AI and personalized learning path, you will see that there are three aspects. One is adaptive learning. You look into AI platforms that modify content in real time based on user performance. An example could be providing easier questions if, let's say, a learner struggles and harder ones when they actually excel in a test. Another could be chatbots and virtual coaches. AI-driven assistants provide instant feedback, answer queries and suggest learning resources. There can be also some predictive analytics. AI predicts the skill gaps and recommends training before they become critical. When you are looking into these typical aspects, IBM Watson Talent Frameworks could be an example which uses AI to identify skill gaps and recommend the personalized training. You can look into Coursera and Udemy AI algorithms which suggest courses based on the past learning behavior. You can also look into LinkedIn Learning, which uses AI to tailor courses to individual users based on industry trends and job roles. So we look now into the possibilities that VR brings in, virtual reality and simulations. Virtual reality and immersive simulations, if you ask me to define, provide hands-on experience and experiential learning in a risk-free environment. So they are particularly valuable in high-risk industries. It could be something like healthcare, something like aviation, manufacturing, etc., or even soft skill training, leadership, public speaking, etc. So if we look into the key features of these aspects, we will certainly settle at realistic training scenarios. Employees practice real-world tasks like surgeons performing operations in VR. That could be a realistic training scenario. There could be a lot of interaction and engagement. Specifically, learners interact with simulated environments rather than passively consuming the content. Or there could be some risk-free learning. When you talk about risk-free learning, it's about employees that can make mistakes in safe setting without real-world consequences. Simulation will definitely bring in a lot of such possibilities because, you do not have to waste a lot of investment or amount or resources for that matter. Let's look into some of the examples. Walmart VR training, which uses Oculus VR to train employees on customer service and crisis management. On days like Black Friday, rush training, etc., this can be carried out. You have the Boeing flight simulations, which trains pilots using the VR-based cockpit simulations. We also have the PwC, PwC leadership training, which uses VR for soft skills, which I mentioned before, training in leadership and communication. Then we move on to something which is more critical, micro learning and mobile learning. Let's understand this first. Micro learning delivers short, focused learning modules that employees can complete quickly. So it is based on the concept that small, digestible learning units improve the retention and engagement. So we look into mobile learning, which allows employees to access training content anytime, anywhere via the smartphones or tablets. So it's basically on-the-go learning, making L&D, making learning and development all the more flexible. You look into the key features of micro-learning and mobile learning, you have this bite-sized content. Modules are typically 2 to 10 minutes long. Then the possibility of JIT, just-in-time learning. Employees access content when needed. Let's say example, just before a meeting or a presentation, they need something, they can directly go and learn that. It improves retention. Studies typically show that the learning in small chunks increases knowledge retention specifically. We also do understand that this mobile learning has certain key features, like it has videos, podcasts, and interactive quizzes. There might be some push notifications and reminders, and even encourage consistent learning habits because of that. You also have the possibility of offline access, where employees can download content for later use. So we do have these two comparisons right here. With micro learning, as I mentioned, we do have bite-sized learning, just-in-time learning improves retention. Some of the examples could be Duolingo. Duolingo uses micro-learning to teach languages in short interactive lessons, whereas we have the Google Primer, which provides short business lessons for professionals. We also have the Ed app. I've discussed more of this in our AI and HRM class, which includes mobile-based micro-learning platforms for corporate training. As part of the mobile learning, you have the SAP Litmus mobile learning, which provides enterprise mobile learning solutions. Then you have Khan Academy and LinkedIn learning apps and other such mechanisms which offer on-the-go professional education altogether. Now we move on to another significant element which we just casually introduced you to in the first session, gamification and social learning. Gamification applies game elements. Points could be leaderboards, it could be badges, it could be rewards, to training programs to increase motivation, engagement, and competition among employees. So when you talk about badges and rewards, employees can reward. So you look into the gamification aspect, you have the social learning as the underlying learning process, which involves collaborative learning through peer interactions, knowledge sharing, and group activities. It's based on Albert Bandura's social learning theory, SLT, which states that people learn through observation, imitation, and modeling. You look into the key features of gamification. Typically, you have badges and rewards. Employees can earn rewards for, let's say, completing tasks. You have the leaderboards, which encourages competition and recognition. You have the quests and challenges, which is all about keeping employees engaged through goal-oriented learning. And typically, if you ask me the different examples, you can have typically, I think, Salesforce, Trailhead, which uses gamification for employee training. Then, as I mentioned previously, Duolingo and even Kahoot, which incorporates gamification elements to make learning engaging. You have, interestingly, the McDonald's Till Training program, or Till Training game, which uses gamification for cashier training. When you come to social learning has some of the key features like collaborative learning communities, Specifically, you have knowledge sharing platforms. When you talk about collaborative learning communities, you have discussion forums in that, you have group chats in that, you have peer reviews. In knowledge sharing platforms, you have employees that contribute and access shared learning resources. And you also have the peer mentoring and coaching where senior employees mentor junior staff specifically. Your Microsoft Teams and Slack learning channels, they use this collaborative learning. You have this Yammer and Workplace by Meta. Yammer and Workplace by Meta, which are social platforms for workplace knowledge sharing. Then the one we discussed in the previous class, Google's G2G, Googler to Googler program, which is yet another peer-driven training initiatives. Now let's move on to opportunities in modern L&D practices. You look into modern learning and development practices, it leverages technological advancements and evolves the workplace needs to enhance the efficiency and effectiveness of the employee training, if you ask me. Let's look into that in greater detail. We start with personalized learning path. Please note, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, personalized learning in L&D involves tailoring educational experience to enhance employee needs, specifically preferences and job roles using data analytics and AI. So unlike the traditional one-size-fits-all training programs, personalized learning enables employees to focus on skills relevant to their career progression. Let's look into how it typically works. You have AI and machine learning as an example, adaptive learning platforms that analyze employees' progress and suggest the content accordingly. There are some data-driven insights that LMS tracking can give. LMS track user engagement and performance to refine the training modules. Then there are some flexible learning paths. Specifically, employees choose their learning trajectory based on the interest and competency gaps specifically. The key benefits essentially would be higher engagement as employees learn at their own pace, improved knowledge retention, if you ask me. It also increases the return on investment, because it addresses the specific skill gaps and it does not waste the money or it does not waste the resources. Another significant factor would be micro-learning. In the first module, we'll just extend that discussion. Micro-learning delivers bit-sized, focused content that can be consumed in short periods. So this method leverages the neuroscience principles. Let smaller chunks of information improve the retention and it typically reduces the cognitive overload. So this is one significant factor. So it is all about short video tutorials, 3 to 5 minute explainer videos on a single concept, or sometimes infographics and interactive modules where you have visual storytelling to simplify the complex topics, or sometimes you have the mobile learning apps specifically which enable on-the-go access to learning material. So what it does is typically it brings in higher retention rates due to the spaced learning. It fits into employees' schedules without disrupting the work, and it encourages just-in-time learning specifically. Now, we also look into social and collaborative learning concept. Specifically, it is all about employees learn through knowledge sharing, through mentorship and team-based problem solving. If you know the theory behind it, it's interesting to note that it aligns with Vygotsky's social learning theory, SLT. Vygotsky's social learning theory, which emphasizes the importance of learning through interaction. So essentially, there is peer learning communities, where employees share best practices through forums and discussion groups. There are mentorship programs specifically where senior employees guide junior employees through structured learning. There are collaborative projects specifically where team-based learning happens using real business problems. So you look into the benefit part, you'll see that it encourages knowledge sharing and innovation. It fosters a culture of continuous learning, the factor which I'm talking again and again, and it enhances more of collaboration and employee engagement. Then we move on to blended learning models. Blended learning is all about something that integrates the traditional instructor-led training with digital tools for a flexible learning experience. So you have synchronous learning, live, virtual or in-person classroom training. That's synchronous for you. You talk about asynchronous learning, which is more of self-paced online modules, video lectures and discussion forums. Then you have interactive elements, interactive elements, which is all about case studies, simulations, and the gamification aspect. So if you look into these blended learning model, you see that it accommodates diverse learning styles. So let's say visual, auditory or kinesthetic, whatever is your learning style, it caters to that. There is also support towards remote and hybrid workforces, and it also reduces the training cost specifically. Now let's look into the best practices for learning and development integration. The first one is leadership buy-in. Leadership buy-in is all about ensuring senior management supports and it champions necessarily all the L&D initiatives. So the action step could be it involves leaders in setting L&D priorities and communicating their importance. The second best practice could be to create a learning culture. Promote continuous learning as core value of organization, and typically the idea would be to celebrate learning milestones and recognize the top learners. Then you have the feedback loop. You talk about regularly collecting feedback from participants to refine and improve L&D programs. The tools would be surveys and focus groups. And finally, you have continuous evaluation where you monitor progress and adapt strategies based on outcome. So the metric would be to track key performance indicators, KPIs, related to L&D effectiveness. Finally, before we conclude, we'll take up a practical element, which is a case study, successful learning and development that has happened in Siemens. So when we look into this particular case, Siemens is a global leader in engineering and technology, recognize the need to modernize its approach to employee learning and development per se. So traditional training methods such as classroom-based session or generic e-learning modules were proving inefficient and costly. So to address these challenges, what Siemens did was that it implemented a digital learning ecosystem powered by AI. Artificial intelligence. So this platform was designed to create personalized learning paths for employees based on their roles, based on their skill gaps and career aspirations and learning preferences. The digital learning ecosystem integrated various tools and technologies, including, let's say, AI-driven analytics to assess the individual's learning needs, adaptive learning modules, gamification elements, or even mobile accessibility to enable the learning anytime, anywhere. So by leveraging the advanced technology, Siemens aimed to make its L&D programs more relevant, more engaging and cost effective. So interestingly, the outcome was that the implementation of the digital learning ecosystem yielded significant benefits for Siemens. It was in the scale of high employee engagement and satisfaction. When you talk about high employee engagement and satisfaction, please note employees reported feeling connected to learning process because the content was tailored to their specific needs. The interactive and gamified elements made the learning enjoyable, leading to higher participation rates. Employees also appreciated the flexibility of accessing the training materials on demand. You also had cost reduction, almost replacing the traditional classroom-based training program. Siemens reduced its training cost by 30%. So savings were achieved through reduced travel expenses, where lower instructor fees was there, and even it had minimized time away from the work. So that was adding on to the efficiency part. It improved the learning outcomes, the personalized learning paths. Specifically ensure that the employees acquired the exact skills they needed for their roles, and also they got real-time feedback, which was more of adaptive and helped employees progress at their own pace, resulting in deeper understanding and retention of knowledge. There was also an outcome of scalability, which we have already addressed, scalability and specifically consistency. The digital platform allowed Siemens to deliver consistent training experiences across its global workforce regardless of the location. So it enabled the company to scale its L&D initiatives quickly as the organization grew or introduced new technology. So the key takeaway with this case study is that the Siemens as an organization, by adopting a digital first approach and integrating AI into L&D strategy, it achieved efficiency, it achieved the required impact, and it went ahead to obtain a greater say in sustainability. So as I mentioned in my introductory video, my intention is not to just give you some technical insights and just go away. Let us connect with what is happening in industry. This case study typically underscores what learning and development can do in an organization, how effectively L&D is critically related or conjoined or linked with the organization existence. That's why with more and more of technological adaptability and technological progress, the organization's sustainability also increased. This is all about learning and development with respect to setting the context. We'll discuss about more of learning and development in the coming classes. Till then, take care. Bye-bye.